If you're looking to finally get your head around how to play Roach Combo, the infamous Forest Craft deck, you've come to the right place. In this video, we're going to go through all the things that you're probably doing wrong, as I found when I first picked up this class and went on a whole bunch of losses. I learned a lot of lessons along the way, and I'm definitely starting to see a turnaround in my fortune. This deck is super powerful. It is a tier 1 deck, but it is a hard deck to pilot effectively. This video is going to break that down. We're going to look at my favorite deck list right now and how to actually make sure we're avoiding those mistakes and piloting this deck correctly so that you can improve your win rate with the faction. All right, so first of all, let's take a look at the deck list that I am running. Now, this is not particularly unique. This is I think, a pretty refined deck list at this point. One of the main things that I personally am trailing right now is 2 copies of Aria. I see a lot of the top tier players only running a single copy of Aria, and instead they run a second copy of Fey Twinkletoes. But the main reason for that, when I come on to talk about Evos, is as I am, I guess, still learning the class, I want to have that consistency of drawing into my kind of play point 6, play point 7 drops. We don't run very much top end. Remember, Bale says it's an 8 drop, but actually we're going to get this thing down to cost 0, and we're playing it as part of a combo. So in terms of late game cards, we have very few, and I just wanted to make sure I had a little bit more consistency, and I found my win rate was a little bit better with that. Okay, so let's first of all talk about what is it that you are doing wrong most likely when you are piloting the deck, and then we'll finish up with a little bit of an overview of the deck and jump into some games. So I think the first thing to consider is that you're probably mulliganing incorrectly. Now, when I was first playing this class, I was trying all sorts of different things with Mulligan and getting a lot wrong. And what I've come to learn is that this is really what you want to be looking for in the Mulligan, and with very few exceptions, to be honest. Why is that? Well, obviously, with the Fairy Conviction and the Good Fairy Pond, we're able to get low to the ground units effectively. With May, the Journey Elf, we can chain that. So on turn 2, if we're going second, we can use the bonus player point to be able to play out 2 fairies and May, and that gives us a nice combo for getting rid of early aggression. And obviously, the Godwood Staff is something that, against something like Swordcraft, is a bit of a problem. But in most other matches, it's actually pretty good because it enables us to get it down. Often we'll just play it on 3, and then for the rest of the game, we've kind of got this guaranteed draw. Now, in addition to that, I think the Fairy Tamers are more than appropriate early gamer, because what these are, they're all fairy generators, right? So they're generating the fairies, which allows us to either put pressure on and tempo in the early game, or to deal with our opponent's board if they're trying to be the beatdown. Now, very importantly, I think that the Glade Fragrant Wood Ward, which is probably one of my top 10 cards in this expansion, to be honest. I think this card is phenomenal and very key to the deck. It's key for a couple of reasons. 1, it's key for drawing through the deck and finding our combo pieces. But 2, if we have this in our opening mulligan, we are seriously on track for our game plan, because it allows us to come back. It's our version of an Anangria. It's our version of that kind of comeback card that just allows us to decimate the board. It's very common that this thing's going to do 9 damage to your opponent's board by having a full hand. That's actually not that difficult to achieve with Forest Craft. And 9 damage on turn 5, that's enough to deal with just about any board. So this is what you want to be looking for. Why do we keep Bale? Bale, remember, gets one less expensive, sees a reduction in its cost by every time that a fairy either it departs the board. So that means either it dies, which obviously you can bring them on with Rush, charge them into something, they die, or if you bounce it back to hand, right? Bale goes down, and what we want to do is we want to get Bale down to 0. So if you look at your mulligan, guys, analyze your games, particularly where you're losing, and ask yourself, did you actually mulligan correctly? Now, the next thing that I think people get wrong, and let me just go back to the full deck list, is something I was definitely doing early, is not pushing tempo. Now, I was getting these fairies in hand and thinking, well, they've got Rush, so I want to be holding them in my hand. They're more valuable in my hand because I can react to my opponent's board. And what was happening is I was getting to turn 6, turn 7, and my opponent still had 20 health. Now, the way we win the game, as you know, is by playing Roach and playing massive combos and doing a lot of damage from hand. What helps us with to achieve that game plan is if we've already done chip damage. And so one of the big mistakes I was doing is just not pushing the tempo early game. We just went over the mulligan. All of those cards can be played out. We can go wide. Imagine you're playing against Runecraft, for example. You can often get 2 to 3 turns before Anangria come down, where you've got a slightly wider board of fairies, and you can put quite a bit of chip damage into your opponent's face. Often, I like to be the one to push the damage and let our opponent trade into our units, because therefore we get to chip damage away from face. And in addition to that, when our opponent does value trade back against our fairies, we've got fairies which can come on and deal with. So we're very good at dealing, particularly with low health units. We're very good at kind of dealing with that from hand. So I prefer to get the chip damage in. And when I started actually playing much more for pushing tempo, I started to see my success go up. Now, somewhat contrary to that, to that point, and this is what makes this a high skill ceiling deck. One of the other things you may be doing wrong that may be leading to your lose with this deck is number 3, throwing away your combo pieces needlessly. Now, this is where the real judgment comes in. Let's say, for example, you've got Baby Carbuncle. Do you play Baby Carbuncle as a 2/2 out on turn 2 or turn 3 to have board presence? Or do you save it knowing that it's one of your key pieces with key combo pieces with Roach? Another example would be something like Lily. Do you play it out on turn 2? If you're thinking about the previous principle, that's correct to do, right? Because obviously we can start to push tempo. However, Lily is one of the most important cards I've come to realize in this deck, and it can help with a lot of the deck's weaknesses. So you really have to think about, are you throwing away the combo pieces? Perhaps most importantly, as I've just told you, you need to think about when it's right to push tempo in the early game and play out your fairies. Let's say, for example, you play a good fairy pond on 1, and then you get a fairy from that, and then maybe you play a fairy tamer. The following turn's interesting, because do you just play your fairies out, or do you save them? Why would you want to save them? Because they are your combo generators. And I'm not talking about Roach. I'm talking about you needing combo 3 for so many of your units. Okay, Twinkle Toes needs combo 3. The Lambert Cairn needs combo 3. If you've thrown away all your fairies, it's really hard to trigger those. And so you could suddenly be left with things like Lambert or Lily or even May in hand, and suddenly realizing that you can't actually trigger their combos, say like around turn 4, because you spent all your fairies. So you always have to assess the matchup and ask yourself, like, am I needing to push the chip damage? Can I get the chip damage in here? But you also need to be assessing your hand and saying, what's our opponent going to play next turn? Am I going to need to play May? Am I going to want to develop a Lily, for example, to deal with something big coming down? And so you've kind of got to weigh up, and I've definitely lost games where I've just needlessly thrown away my combo pieces. Another one, just to add on that particular mistake, I would say is Bale. Often I saw myself and I see other people playing Bale like without really thinking about other ways they could deal with the board. Obviously, this thing does 4 damage, so it's obviously a good removal tool. But what I would say is you should avoid playing this out for removal if you almost have any other way of dealing with the board, because Bale is a key part of the combo, which is your win condition with Killer Roach. Now, that is, I suppose, brings me on to the other thing is, like, one of the reasons you may be losing is just not understanding the Killer Roach combo and not being able to calculate whether you've got the damage effectively. Now, we all know by this stage that Roach obviously gets an extra +1 attack for every card you played previously. That's what combo means. How do we chain Killer Roach most effectively in this deck? Well, first of all, we want to look for 0 cost cards. Where do we get 0 cost cards? We get them from Lambert when we trigger combo 3 on this. By the way, a good combination is to use things like Bug Alert on the actual Lambert. That's quite a nice combination. You can play Lambert down, get a fairy, play another fairy, play Bug, play Lambert again, and then you can actually get the 0 cost cards. So 0 cost come from Lambert, and they also come from Bale being reduced down to 0. Every time that you have an extra 0 cost cards, the Roach combo is like so much more powerful, and it's going to give you so much more reach. We'll look at some of the math in a minute. The other thing that you want to be looking to do is you've got to ask yourself, have you got Godwood staff down? Now, if you've got the Godwood staff down, that is pretty much always the way in which you want to bounce Roach. We want to play Roach twice in a single turn. And so what we want to be doing is we want to be playing looking at our player points. Let's say our max player points is like 9, okay? What we want to be doing is we want to be playing everything, getting down to 5, and then once we get to 5, we can play, for example, the Baby Carbuncle, bounce something else that's on the board, not the Godwood staff, then drop Killer Roach, so Roach is getting an extra +1 because you played Carbuncle first, and then you use the Godwood staff to bounce Roach back to hand. Now, obviously, you've got 0 play points, but that's when you then super evolve Carbuncle. That gives you +3. Carbuncle becomes a 5/5 super evolved unit. Hopefully, it can trade into something and kill it, giving you another 1 damage to face. And that +3 now allows you to replay Roach. And one of the really good tips that I got from I think it was Shadowverse Master, shout out to him. He talked about basically calculating your max player points. So let's say it's 9. Subtract 5 from 9. That gives you, in this case, 4. Add however many 0 costs you've got. So let's say we've got Bale and 1 from Lambert. So that's 2. So our 4 + 2 becomes 6. And what you then do is you times that by 2, which is 12. And then you add +1 +3. So in that case, it would be 13. +3, that'd be 16 damage. If you included what's his name, Baby Carbuncle in that, then that formula becomes +5. Now, learning that formula in your head takes a little bit of time, but trust me, when you come to playing the games, it massively speeds up your ability to calculate the damage. Now, in and amongst all of that, and this is where the combo gets really complicated, is you've got to obviously think, what's your opponent's board state? And there's things like playing things like the Mage Journey Elf might enable you to clear off a unit, for example, or playing Lambert down as you play down through your 9 player points to get the combo. If you played Lambert on its combo, i.e. turn 3, that suddenly generates another 0 cost live in the middle of the combo. So you have to calculate that as well. So it can become even more complex. But for sure, if you don't spend some time with the math and understanding it, you will lose. And that brings me on to my next thing that you're probably doing wrong, and that is time management. Guys, there isn't a deck in the game where time management is more important than this one, right? If you are going to go off on your Roach turn, you need to go the minute your turn starts, pretty much, okay? So how do you do that? So I think the first thing is you really need to be calculating your combo, not on the turn that you're going to do it, but in your opponent's turn, and hopefully in your previous turn. And a really good tip there is to actually give yourself enough time. So rather than just pressing pass because you finished your previous turn, use your full timer with this deck. Use your full timer to calculate your next turn and maybe even the turn ahead, and that will make you feel like you've bought yourself more time. But when you are going to go on the Roach turn, on the combo, go. Start flicking out those 0 costs immediately and get that chain going, because it is going to take a while to click through everything that you need to do. If Lambert's on the board, remember you can give +1 to the Roach as well, add into that. If you've already played Aria, remember that the fairies can go to face as well, add into the damage. So there's so much to do in that turn that if you don't start going on the start of the turn, you're probably going to do what I did, which is ending up just completely roping and ballsing up the entire turn and pretty much throwing the game. Now, another thing that I realized I was doing wrong, particularly against good players, is only playing for the one combo, or another way of saying it is, yeah, looking for one combo instead of two. Often, if you're drawing through your cards, you could end up with two roaches in hand, and one of the, or maybe you've even only got one. But what you do is you play like a mini combo. So if we go back to our turn 9, we've got lethal. On turn 8, what we might do is play out Roach with a smaller combo, bouncing it with something like Bug Alert or a Godwood or maybe even a Carbuncle, and you know, doing like 5-6 damage that turn, setting up making the following turn, meaning we've got a much smaller target, if you like, for lethal. So I watched a lot of top players, and they were doing that quite frequently. They were going in and they were getting that little bit of damage. Arya can do a similar thing on the turn you play her. She can put a little bit of damage on. And another card that is quite useful that some people are playing is which I really like this card, but it's the Archer. So if you wanted to run, if you don't have the second Arya, or you didn't want to get duplicates, you could run the Archer, this card here. And basically what this then does is it allows you to do what I just said, which is almost form like that second combo, right? Because that goes in and it does a ton of damage, and then you go in with your guy and finish him off. So not doing that, only trying to get them down, and your opponent's going to be healing. They know what's coming. If they're at 20 health, it's going to be really difficult to do. So definitely try to set up a sort of smaller combo ahead of time. Okay, now finally, the other thing that you might not be doing correctly, thing you might be doing wrong, is using your evos and your super evos ineffectively. Now, I would say that your main targets for evolution in this deck, your main two are Lily and Glade. Now, we already talked about Glade a little bit. Let's just go into here. Yeah, we already talked about Glade a little bit. Not Godwood Staff. BJ, Glade, here we go. This card is absolutely phenomenal. If you can get this card around that kind of turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, and turn 4 if you've got the bonus player point, obviously. You want to evo this guy, like, it will clear the board, you draw cards, you reset, you're beautiful, you're good to go. It's definitely your number one. Now, the other one that is really, really good and is a very close second best is Lily. Sometimes later in the game, Lily is a better evo actually than Glade, because Glade's obviously going to clear up any board by turn 5. But later in the game, when you've got really big things, like Lily's excellent, right? She comes down on combo, she puts something on 1, and then you go ahead and evo, which does 1 damage to that thing. In other words, it kills a big unit, but also draws a card. So similar to Glade, it's destroying and it's obviously drawing as well. So you really want to be saving your evos for those. The exception to that is when you're going down the pushing the tempo type of route, and that's where it is more than okay to use an evo to get that chip damage. Remember the first tip we talked about, not pushing tempo, not getting early game chip damage in. Sometimes you use an evo because they've left a fairy on the board and you've just got a free run to face, and you just go, do you know what, I'm gonna make it more difficult for them to deal with me, and I'm actually going to push some extra chip damage. Outside of that chip damage, though, you really want to be targeting, like I say, Glade and Lily. Now, your super evos, we don't have many in the deck. We've got the Arya, we've got the Olivia, and they are it, guys. These cards have obviously super evo specific abilities. So Olivia, for example, can really help you to clear off an opponent's threatening board. An Arya can be quite proactive because you can use a super evo, kill 1 unit, and then the fairies can get chip damage in. But the other, so I'll often use 1 point on one of those. The other one is obviously we want to be using it on Baby Carbuncle, or at worst case, using it on Roach itself to do 3 damage. However, in the example as I gave earlier, if you've got a choice between spending the super on Baby Carbuncle or Roach, you want to spend it on Carbuncle. You'll actually get more damage. It's actually worth 5 damage as opposed to 3. So you would always play it on Carbuncle over Roach. So I would say in order, you want to spend your first one on Olivia or Arya, and your second one you want to use on Carbuncle. If you don't have Carbuncle, you probably use it on Roach for the big finish. So that's how you want to be spending your evos and your super evos. All right, so this is the deck list, guys. We've already talked about the Mulligan. Let's jump into some games now and see what this looks like in practice. All right, so first up, we've got Haven. Now, Haven's quite a slow match. But we, as you saw there, we kept the Glade, and we've actually drawn our Good Fairy and our May. Now, when I'm only running one copy of Aria, sometimes, particularly in slow games, I think it's more than okay to keep the one copy of Aria. But I think if you're playing two copies, I'd probably rarely would keep Aria, to be honest. Okay, so as you can see, we've made that choice where we've used a combo piece for tempo instead to help us get that chip damage. Now we know that card's coming in, it does heal for 1, so he's gonna obviously as a Haven player is gonna be able to heal somewhat. Now there we actually decided not to play because we would have played into his self flow, can't say it, the 5-drop that does 3 AoE. Now this card means that we can't target it with May, so we do just go ahead and use our Glade Evo to clear this board. It's one of the few annoying targets because we do have quite targeted damage. Okay, so uses an Unholy there, which says to me that it must be quite desperate. We did just burn a Roach, but fortunately we do have one in hand. Now we're able to play Aria here with actually without Super Evo in. And when you've got that opportunity for a proactive turn, sometimes, obviously, we just trigger her ability there. No need to kind of waste a Super Evo. Not that we could do it that turn anyway. And again, Glade just absolutely phenomenal at clearing out the ambush units. Definitely in this matchup, it is worth thinking about that, because that ambush unit can run away with things, so you might actually want to save a Glade until you see that come down. Now, this is the card we were thinking about earlier, isn't it? Salefa, that's it. Okay, so turn 8, we're going to Fairy. So we actually do go ahead and use Bale here. You know, we don't have Lilies, we don't have Glades, we don't have Maze to be able to bounce. So we kind of, that was an example board where we kind of were forced to use it. Now, it's quite rare that I use Super Evo on Glade, but this goes to show, like earlier on, where we didn't sort of throw it away on Aria. We were actually able to spend that third one on the Glade. So out comes the Unholy, clearing the board. Now we have managed to get some chip damage in here. So we should and play the Lambert. Remember, so this triggers that combo where Lambert obviously gives us a 0 cost, so we put that in there as well. Into Fairy. Get the +1. Now we Carbuncle. We do have to do it this way around because we need Carbuncle for the bounce on Roach, right? If we had the Godwood staff down, then we wouldn't bounce Roach with Carbuncle. We'd bounce something else. But we're able to do a phenomenal amount of damage and win the game. So quite a nice example of quite a big Roach combo. Okay, so against Swordcraft, we are having to fight for our dear lives in the early game. So I did actually keep Aria. I think this is something that again, kind of like really wanting to be able to hit that on tempo, but I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel like it's a bit of a mistake. I kind of feel like, especially in this matchup, that you've really got to be super proactive in the early game. And you can see we've got early game here, and yet he's still got the board, right? However, we're going to Fairy Conviction here. So real kind of like battle for the board. Now, I'm pretty happy to see the dog here, to be honest. What this does is we can use the Lambert to actually give the +1, and that means we can clear this board nicely. Now, at this stage in the game, we're pretty happy to both be on 19 and to have a clear board. But then this gets pretty scary. Now, the Crown is on an empty board is absolutely terrifying, especially for Forest, because we generally get behind quite quickly in this matchup anyway on board. So we actually took that turn to kind of try our best to punish the tempo the tempo loss, sorry, of playing the Crown and put units down. And as a result, we have got 2 units that have managed to stick. So remember we talked about the Glade. This card is so clutch, guys. It's so clutch in the mid game. Just like those Anangrias, just like those what do you call them in the portal. Forgotten the one that draws. I've forgotten the one that plays a copy of an alpha beta. What's it called? The name escapes me. Right, now because we've got a fairy down, this is a good way to use Olivia. Because you can actually super evo the fairy who can go straight to face. So that chip damage, that's 4 damage from her, and then you get the +1 overspill from the Olivia kill, and that actually puts Sword down to 12 here. So keeping up in that early game and then getting this kind of combo with Olivia is absolutely pivotal. Now this is a horrendous combo for us to have to deal with, Amelia with the Crown. It really is horrendous, and then he goes ahead and... oh my lord. Wow, what a turn. So we're going to go ahead. And I actually think we should have... did we have a Lily here? No, we didn't have a Lily. Okay. If we did, we should have... oh, we did have a Lily. Yeah, we should have played Lily first. I think we kind of misplayed that a little bit. I'm just happy that we were able to clear that board, though. So notice the kind of combos that are doing that, because it is very, very tough against Sword. Now, we're up to turn 9, and usually turn 9 is where you want to be kind of going off. Somewhere between 8 and 10 is where most of the Roach combos go off, depending on how much health they've got. But this is quite low health. We've got him down to 12. That's very successful. So we can go ahead and use the Lambert. And again, we use Carbuncle for the bounce because we didn't have the God Roach staff down. So Carbuncle's going to attack, put another 1 damage on the face, and then Roach comes down for the big finish. GG. Okay, so against Portcraft, we kept the staff because we knew, you know, again, that's going to be a draw engine. This game's going to go a little bit longer. We've got the Glade and we've got the Bale. So these are all cards that are good in our opening hand. But obviously, we are looking for some early game to help us to compete. We are just going to have to play out the Lambert there. Obviously, not getting the 0 cost, but that's fine. Potentially could always bounce it later. So this is a slightly more like slow build, artifact, patient build up. Not artifact, amulet. And I think one of the things that allows you to kind of take that approach is when you've got Glade in hand. If you've got Glade in hand, then you know that you can kind of you know that you can deal with any board that they build. You do feel like so much more happy with this deck when you've got Glade. So again, having that Glade or Lily by turn 5 is pretty pivotal. Lily's very good at dealing with Anangria as well, obviously. Alouette. That was the one. That was the card we were thinking about earlier. Yeah, most of the factions have got this sort of type of 5-drop, haven't they? Obviously, I'd rate Anangria as the best, but... getting our fiery generators down and then using May. And obviously we can use the bug alert to bring her back. This is a really nice combo. May herself doing 3 damage and then the bug alert bringing her back doing 2. If you wanted to play May again, that would put you up to 8 damage. So that's your combo for dealing with tall things. So opportunity here. We're not worried about this board because it's going to die, but we're still going to attack anyway because we Super Evo just to get the 1 extra ping. And so now we've got Portal down. Unfortunately, Ralmir is one of the most horrendous. It's really a win con against us. Now, we're quite lucky in the sense that he's only got 2 units down with it, and he's probably not got the right ones either, to be honest. But when they play Ralmir properly, it can really hurt us. That's one of the times, by the way, when you would use your Bale. So where we talked in the deck tech about saving Bale, you would need to use it against Ralmir just to be able to have a chance of clearing that board. Probably that plus some sort of Super Evo, like Olivia combo or something. It's a very difficult board for Forest to deal with, so you've got to prepare for it. Okay, so we've got our Roach in hand, so we're going to go. We want to get in and under. It's one of the good things about Roach Combo is that it can usually finish the game before a lot of the big 10 player point game enders, right? And so a lot of the top decks rely on those cards at the minute, and Roach can just get in before. So we Super Evo Baby Carbuncle. No 1 ping because there's nothing to attack, but that's okay. Roach is big enough to end the game. Okay, so let's take a look at Runecraft. So this is a very nice combo, right? For that sort of... Remember we talked about tempo play, and against Runecraft, this is absolutely what you want to be doing. Before that Anangria can come out, you really want to be trying to push damage. Now notice, like, the next turn we could have saved it and we could have comboed with Fae Twinkletoe, but then we would have been in range, we'd have been in range of Anangria. Instead, I wanted to actually push the damage, and so we're pushing the damage through now, and we'll just play that out as is. Now, unfortunately for us, he has the Divine Thunder, which is also a perfect answer. I mean, that would have been game, I think, right there, if he didn't have that card. But we've got the Glade to come back. See how important that early tempo is against Runecraft, though. So we're into Super Evo range. He's doing a lot of spell boosting here. It's pretty terrifying. I'm expecting an early decline. So again, Olivia or Arya to play our first Super Evo. More than okay. We want to keep capitalizing on that early chip damage. He's obviously healed a little bit, so we want to get him back down into danger. William's going to clear. Often when you go wide, by the way, you know William's going to be the answer, so you then want to be thinking, like, you know, can you deal with a William, basically, especially one that's evoed up like this. Full 9 damage, we'll deal with it. So I'm always counting your hand card and size when you play Glade, because you know it's going to draw 2. You've got a bit of a hand management to do there. Okay, another William. Oh, and he gets the healing. So we are burning a lot of cards. That's okay if you've got what you need in hand. The Super Evo from Carbuncle. Clearing the way. Down comes Roach. And that is a massive. So I think we actually got 16 damage just from Roach there. Don't forget we played Aria, so we had a really, really large combo. Okay, so let's check out the matchup against Dragoncraft. So against Dragon, we want to be thinking about what have we got, obviously, to deal with the Intimidate deck cards. Because of the targeted damage, it is a problem for us, and so having things like Blade are particularly important here. But also, you know, the Bales can be really good, as can May. Because basically our fairies are obviously useless in trading, we can't do that. But what we are doing here is, because we had such a good early tempo, we're basically trying to compete in a bit of a race. Although this is going to probably bring him back into it. Really feel that Mulligan's so important, and obviously every time we got Glade, we feel way more confident. Okay, so he evos the Intimidate unit. So now we're going to use May. So we're looking for that Roach. We've done the hard bit. Just got to find the combo. Sometimes you lose games because of that, by the way. Like, you do everything right, but you don't find the Roach. I had a game the other day where I had like 14 cards left and 3 Roaches were in the bottom 14. What you can do instead of that second Aria or second Fade Twinkle Toes, you can run 1 copy of Grasshopper, and that will help deal with that problem, because you can specifically treat it like a 4th Roach. But we finally find him. So, 0 cost. So 8 minus 5. Plus 2 for your 2 zeros. 6, 7. Times it by 2, 14. Plus 1. And plus 5, although we're not going to get the kill, so it'd be plus 4 in this sense. Kaboom! So the previous one was more of a mid-rangey type of you want to say inevitable. I always get the name of that confused. Dragon, but this is a different dragon. So we see the fan on 1. So we prep the fairy generators. And here we actually do play Lily downright, because we know that it's his turn 3. If he uses the fan, he can't actually clear that. Okay, so with the bounce we clear and we get a combo off for the Deepwood Bounty. And don't forget, the Deepwood Bounties heal you by 1 as well. So sometimes thinking like a bug alert for Lambert can be good. But here we use it to push more chip damage. But he's going to Evo Apollo. And that should help him clear up the board. So I think we should bug alert the Lambert here. Yeah. So we could just keep generating value from it, getting that fairy in the deep wood each time, and the buff. Okay, so he is obviously the beatdown in this matchup, and he can often, it's one of the only decks that can often outrace us, right, to their combo. So we're really going to go with big pressure. Now I think I messed this up, to be honest. No, I didn't. No, because I still needed to clear. I was going to say we could have put the, if we wanted to push more damage, we could have buffed the 1/1, but actually, I think that was correct. We needed to clear the board. Problem is he's going to kind of do the same thing back to us, but with Olivia. He's also sneakily just put the lens down, which means that should we have a ward unit, it wouldn't be enough. However, as in this faction, we don't have that choice anyway. Okay, so this time we use... Do we use a Super Evo here? We do. And this time we use it on the 1/1, right? Push that extra bit of chip damage. Use the Lambert too. And I don't think there's anything he can do. Yeah, obviously if he had the Forte maybe, then he could. Okay, so finally I want to show you a game of a mirror match, because this is a really important lesson to be had here. So if you take a look at my mulligan here, you'll see that we've got a good hand for the kind of push tempo opener, right? And so what we do is we go ahead and try to sort of dominate by getting ahead on board and getting chip damage in. Now, in the mirror, that is not the strategy that you want to employ. And I think this game is going to show you why. So far, so good, right? So Faye is quite good in the mirror. See, so we got a nice value trade and was able to push a little bit of damage. Now we're actually going to, we're going to actually, yeah, we're going to. Okay. So kind of denying the Glade play. And then we can use May to clear. So far it all looks pretty sweet, right? And he's having to be the defensive one. He's the one who's having to kind of like clear the board. And, you know, we've got more chip damage in, so you think like we're ahead in terms of our big combo. But watch what he does on this turn. Double bounty he's got. Here's Roach, and he uses Evo. Now, this is something we talked about in the opening about having two combos. So for all of that work that we did, getting the chip damage in the early game, thinking we're ahead, he just used his stuff to defend, and then he's gone for the double Roach approach. So he's had that one turn with a mini combo, which he just did, and now all of a sudden I'm down to 12 health, and it didn't matter that I was ahead on board or chip damage, because now all of a sudden, with even just a half decent combo finish on turn 8, he will win. He's making really good uses of his Lamberts. And look how he saved both of his both of these at 0 cost. And then he uses his Evo point on Roach, and that's all she wrote. So I think that last game was a really important one to show you in the mirror match, that in that match you really want to be looking for a sort of using your tools to kind of remove and to stay safe, and really looking for a kind of 2 combo approach, as our opponent did to us. Guys, I hope this video has really helped you realize what you were doing wrong and how to play the Forest Craft class a little bit more effectively when you're looking to finish with that Roach combo. It's not an easy deck, it's a complicated one, but hopefully this has given you some really good tips now to take to ladder and go and practice. If you don't feel 100% confident, I definitely recommend playing against AI, playing against some good deck lists, advanced AI, but use UD to actually help guide you through a few matches, just to kind of get confident with the actual navigation of the deck. Other than that, if you've enjoyed this, don't forget to hit that thumbs up down below and drop a comment. And if you did enjoy this video, then definitely check this one out next. Like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for all the support, guys. Really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.